In the quiet village of Yumuin, surrounded by undisturbed hills and red dusty paths, the wind carried stories like palm wine in a calabash, sweet, strong, and sometimes bitter. It was on one of such calm mornings that Obinna, a devoted father in his early 40s, sat under the old mango tree in front of his compound, cradling his blind son in his arms. The boy, Chikwudi, was only 7 years old but had eyes that had never seen the color of his father's face, the sun in the sky, or the dancing flames of the fireplace. His mother, Ifyananya, had died giving birth to him, a death that broke Obinna's spirit and left him clutching the boy as the last remaining thread of his once joyful world. "Papa," the boy asked one day, tilting his head in the direction of his father's breathing, "is the sky really blue, or is that just a story you like to tell?" Obinna swallowed the knot in his throat and smiled. "It is blue, Nwam. Blue like the river behind our house when the sun rises." Chikwudi smiled, reaching out as though to touch the sky from the mat they lay on every evening. "Then one day, maybe I will see it." "You will," Obinna whispered. "I promise you you will." But promises made by men are sometimes too fragile to survive life's brutality. Obinna's life became a constant juggle. He was a bricklayer in the town, working on building sites during the day and coming home to bathe, feed, and care for Chikwudi at night. It was a hard life, one full of sweat, sore muscles, and nights that never brought enough rest. Still, he never once complained. The boy was his miracle, the only piece of Ifyananya he had left. And even if the child couldn't see him, Obinna made sure the boy could feel his love with every word, every touch, every whispered lullaby in the midnight hush. But when the loneliness of fatherhood grew too heavy, Obinna eventually met Ngozi, a quiet widow with a son of her own. Her husband had died in a car accident in Onitsha 2 years before, and she had been struggling alone with her 10-year-old boy, Somadina. At first, the two parents met at the stream, washing clothes and chatting softly under the mango trees. It wasn't long before they discovered the weight of their grief matched, and their wounds fit into each other's arms like puzzle pieces. After some months, they decided to come together, not because of love, but because of the mutual understanding that two hands could carry what one hand could not. They got married in a modest village ceremony. The compound now had two boys, one blind, one strong, Chikwudi and Somadina. And surprisingly, the two boys became like twin souls. Somadina never once treated Chikwudi like someone broken. In fact, he became his protector. Anyone who mocked Chikwudi for being blind would have Somadina to deal with. His fists were small, but his rage was mighty. Obinna had never known peace like this before. His wife cooked, the boys laughed, and at night, when everyone slept, he would look up at the stars and whisper to Ifyananya in the sky, "We're doing fine, my love. Your son is safe." But happiness, like harmattan fog, often disappears when the sun rises. One rainy evening, Obinna didn't return from work. The clouds had gathered like angry elders, and thunder rumbled through the village like a warning drum. Ngozi paced the compound, her wrapper tied tightly around her chest, eyes darting toward the road. When the village messenger finally arrived, soaked to the bone, he delivered the words no wife wanted to hear. "Obinna, your husband. He was working at that new site near Aka Junction. The wall collapsed. He didn't make it." The world spun. The cries that followed shook the compound. Chikwudi held tightly to Somadina, unaware of what the tears meant. But he knew one thing. Something had gone terribly wrong. That night, the mango tree didn't sing. The moon didn't show. Obinna was gone. Without Obinna, the home became a strange forest of bitterness. Ngozi changed. Whether it was grief, anger, or frustration, no one could tell. But her love, which had once warmed Chikwudi like fire in harmattan, turned to cold stones. She began to stare at him with eyes full of disgust. "You're cursed," she hissed one day as he mistakenly spilled water while trying to find the bathroom. "You killed your mother the day you were born. Now your father is dead too. What do you carry in your soul, Chikwudi? Misfortune?" The boy shrunk like wet cloth on a cold line. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know." She ignored his stammering. Days passed. Food stopped coming. His mat was moved outside the veranda. He was no longer allowed to eat with them. She began to beat him at the slightest mistake. She told the neighbors he was going mad. The villagers, as always, whispered but did nothing. But Somadina did. Despite his mother's warning, Somedina continued to sneak food to Chakudi at night. He would hide boiled yam in his shirt, slip Gary into his friend's hand, and hug him tight every time the beatings grew worse. You didn't kill anyone, he whispered to Chakudi one night under the rain. You're my brother. I don't care if you can't see. I see you. And that's enough. Their love, that quiet, unshakable brotherhood, became the only light Chakudi knew. But light doesn't last forever. One morning, Somedina returned from the stream to find his friend gone. Mama, where is Chakudi? Ngozi looked up from the basket of okra she was slicing and replied coldly, he's not here. He ran away. Maybe he went mad. Who knows? You're lying, he shouted. She slapped him across the face. Don't ever raise your voice at me. That boy is gone. You should be happy. But Somedina was not happy. He ran around the village, asking, searching, calling. But Chakudi was nowhere to be found. It was as though the earth had swallowed him. He cried for days, and the compound, once full of laughter, became a silent grave. What no one knew was that fate had decided Chakudi's story was not meant to end in darkness. As he wandered blindly into the bush, weak and cold, a black Prado jeep driving from Enugu stopped. A woman stepped out, Madame Veronica, a wealthy businesswoman returning to her father's compound for a burial. She found the blind boy unconscious on the roadside. Something in her heart stirred. She ordered her driver to pick him up. She didn't know then that this boy would one day call her mother. Madame Veronica Okonkwo was not the kind of woman you easily ignored. Even though she was barely in her mid-40s, the aura that followed her was one of quiet command. She was tall, fair-skinned, with delicate tribal marks and the kind of elegance that was not learned. It was inherited. After years of living in Lagos, running one of the largest textile export businesses in Nigeria, she had returned to her father's compound in Enugu for her younger brother's burial. But she hadn't expected to find a blind boy lying like a rag in the dust of the expressway. The car had come to a screeching halt when her driver noticed a small figure near the edge of the road, barely moving. Veronica had stepped out in her high heels and gold-laced wrapper, shielding her eyes against the sun. When she saw the boy, skin burnt from days under the heat, lips cracked, and clothes torn, her heart clenched. Who left a child like this? She muttered, kneeling slowly. The boy stirred weakly and whispered, Papa, Papa, where are you? I'm sorry, Papa. The pain in his voice was unlike anything she had heard. Something deep in Veronica's soul cracked. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know where he came from. But what she knew, deep and true, was that God had placed him on her path for a reason. Take him, she told her driver. We're not leaving him here. Madam, are you sure? He looks like one of those stray. I said carry him, she snapped. The driver obeyed. That was the moment Chakudi's life began again. Veronica took the boy home to her estate in Jareugu, a large cream-painted house with flowers that lined every edge of the fence and housemates who spoke in whispers. The moment she carried him in, her staff were shocked. They had never seen their madam bring anything into that house that wasn't planned. Veronica personally bathed him, fed him warm pepper soup, and held his frail hand as he slept for hours, mumbling in his dreams. For 3 days, he didn't fully wake. On the 4th day, when his eyes fluttered open, he whispered, Is this heaven? Veronica chuckled, brushing his hair gently. No, my dear, but I'll make it feel like it. She called him Chuka, short for Chakudi, the name he had given her when she asked. But as the days passed and she learned more about his story, the dead mother, the loving father, the wicked stepmother, the friend he left behind, Veronica began to feel something she hadn't felt in years, motherhood. You see, Veronica had never had a child. She had married young, but after 6 miscarriages and 1 failed IVF attempt, her husband had walked away. She had given her life to business, to the thrill of money, to philanthropy even, but her house had always been quiet at night. Until now. Within weeks, Chuka transformed. His body healed quickly, but his heart took longer. He still whispered his father's name at night. He still dreamed of mango trees and the laughter of Somedina. But Veronica never rushed him. She simply stayed, listened, held his hand, and prayed. One day, during a doctor's appointment in Park Lane Hospital, the physician, Dr. Akpabio, examined his eyes and said something surprising. Madam, this boy may have a fighting chance. Veronica's eyes widened. You mean he could see again? With proper care and surgery, preferably abroad. The retina is damaged, but not completely beyond repair. He's young. His eyes may respond. It was the first time Chuka smiled a real smile. He turned his head toward Veronica and whispered, "Did you hear that, Mama?" She did, and she made a promise he would see again. By the time Chuka turned 10, Veronica had arranged for him to travel to London. It was a 3-month medical journey, filled with tests, consultations, and finally, 2 major surgeries. The first time the bandages were removed, he cried, not because he could see, but because he saw the face of a woman who had given him the love of 2 mothers. "You are beautiful, Mama," he whispered, and Veronica couldn't hold back the tears. That day, Chuka saw the world for the first time, the color of the sky, the shape of trees, the texture of the clouds. He stood by the window of the hospital and watched the cars move, blinking and laughing. "I used to imagine all this," he said, "but my imagination was too small." Chuka returned to Nigeria months later, walking taller, more confident, with books in his bag and hunger in his heart. Veronica sent him to the best schools. She adopted him legally. He now bore her surname, Chuka Veronica Okonkwo. He was brilliant, top of his class, always eager to learn, respectful, but driven. He didn't forget his past. Every year, on the anniversary of his father's death, he lit a candle in front of the house and stood quietly for 1 hour. "I'm living the life you wanted for me, Papa," he would whisper. He didn't forget Somedina either. He tried asking Veronica for help to trace his old village, but she told him to wait until the time was right. "You'll know when it's time to go back," she said. And the time came when Chuka turned 24. He wore a plain white shirt and black trousers. His car, a sleek black Lexus, drove slowly through the red roads of Yumyuin, the dust rising in familiar waves. The village hadn't changed much. The old market still buzzed with women selling akpa, pepper, and dried fish. The stream still trickled like laughter between hills. The mango trees still stood tall. But one house had grown cold, Ngozi's. She sat on a stool outside, older, her wrapper faded, her eyes dim with bitterness. Her compound was quiet, empty. Her son, Somedina, had grown into a tall, fine young man, now a village youth leader. When Chuka stepped out of the car, sunglasses in hand, she didn't recognize him at first. But Somedina did. He froze. His eyes widened. Then he ran. "Chukwudi." Chuka smiled. "Soma, my brother." They hugged like broken pieces being glued back together. Ngozi watched in shock as the 2 boys embraced. Then, slowly, as realization dawned, her body began to tremble. I thought you were dead." "I was," Chuka said, turning to her slowly. "But God sent me light." And then, without bitterness, he smiled at her and turned back to Somedina. "Come with me. I have a home now. One with love. Let me take you there." And with tears in his eyes, Somedina followed. As the car drove away, Ngozi sat alone, the silence around her screaming louder than any voice. She had lost both sons, one to cruelty, the other to regret. The boy she called cursed was now a man of blessing. When the car drove past the Nkwo Market Square, through the bumpy red road that led back to the city, Somedina sat beside Chuka in stunned silence. The wind from the open window brushed through his shirt, but his body remained stiff, as if afraid that this moment, this reunion, might vanish like mist if he moved too quickly. Chuka, who now looked every inch like a prince, skin polished by care, eyes clear as spring water, clothes neat and precise, simply smiled. "You haven't changed, Soma," he said gently. "Your voice is still loud, and your eyes still dance like they carry fire inside." Somedina chuckled nervously. "And you, Chuka, you can see. You can actually see me. You don't have to hold my hand anymore." "I still will," Chuka said, gripping his palm. Sight did not replace love. For a moment, the 2 sat in quiet brotherhood, not needing to speak. Their hearts had said enough. When they arrived at the estate in Enugu, Somedina was speechless. The compound was larger than 5 village compounds put together. A white gate with electric security, lush green grass that danced in the breeze, and a flower garden that smelled like a blessing. The main house stood tall, cream-colored, with blue roofing and glass windows that reflected the sunlight like diamonds. Madame Veronica stood by the front door, wearing a purple lace blouse and wrapper, a warm smile spreading across her face. Age had barely touched her, She had the poise of a queen and the calm of a river. "Welcome home," she said softly, stepping forward. Somedina froze. He bowed instantly, unsure whether to kneel or speak. "Mama, good afternoon, Ma." Chuka stepped beside him and held his shoulders. "Mama, this is my brother. The one who fed me when I starved. The one who protected me. The only reason I survived that house." Veronica's eyes welled with tears. She opened her arms and walked towards Somedina. Without hesitation, she hugged him. "You have a mother here too now," she whispered. Somedina didn't respond immediately. His throat was too tight to speak. For the first time since his father died, he felt the warmth of maternal arms without fear. Over the next few weeks, Somedina began to adjust to life in the city. It was strange at first, waking up to the hum of generators instead of the village cockcrow, eating cornflakes instead of roasted yam, hearing English spoken like it was native to the tongue. But what struck him most was the kindness. No one shouted at him. No one beat him for asking questions. Madame Veronica treated him like her own. She took him shopping, got him a phone, and registered him into an ICT program at one of the best training schools in Enugu. "This house is for both of you," she said one evening at dinner. "I didn't give birth to either of you, but God gave you both to me." Somedina glanced at Chuka and smiled. "Mama, you are our gift too." That night, as they sat in the living room, eating suya and watching a comedy film, it felt like the family they had lost had returned in another form. But sometimes, even in joy, the past knocks. One day, while helping Madame Veronica sort out some of her foundation's outreach files, Chuka stumbled upon a small brown envelope. Inside were documents with photos of Veronica as a young woman, with a man who looked strangely familiar. He froze. "Mama, who is this man?" Veronica's face went pale. She took a deep breath and sat down slowly. "That was your biological uncle," she said, her voice low. "My elder brother. The one whose burial I came for the day I found you." Chuka sat beside her. "And this?" He held out a child's photo. Veronica looked at it for a long moment. "That child is me," she said softly. "When I was your age, I too lost everything. My parents died in a road accident. I was raised by a distant cousin who mistreated me. For many years, I prayed to become someone who could rewrite the stories of others." She looked up at Chuka and touched his cheek. "You were not an accident. You were the answer to a prayer." Tears filled Chuka's eyes. He turned and hugged her. "Mama, I don't know how to thank you." "Then don't," she smiled. "Just become the man God designed you to be." 2 months later, something unexpected happened. An old man arrived at the gate of the estate, clutching a worn walking stick. His name was Okeke, a village elder from Yumuin. He had come with news. He sat with them in the parlor, sipping malt drink as he cleared his throat. "It's about Ngozi," he said. "She's not well. Her mind is gone. She walks around the village calling your name, Chuka. Sometimes she shouts at trees. She tells people her son was taken by spirits. No one talks to her anymore." Somedina frowned. She was never a kind woman. "But I can't lie. I feel pity." Madame Veronica looked at both boys, then spoke with the firmness of a mother who knew life well. "Forgiveness is not a gift for them. It is a release for you." The boys nodded slowly. Though the wounds were deep, they were no longer bleeding. Chuka, now 25, decided to use part of Madame Veronica's land to open a school for visually impaired children. It was called The Light Within, a place where blind children would learn with dignity, play with joy, and grow with love. Somedina became the program director, handling technology classes and mentorship. Together, the two brothers created a haven, built not just with bricks and paint, but with memory and mercy. One day, during a school opening ceremony, Chuka stood before the microphone and addressed the gathering. "I was once a boy who saw nothing but darkness. My world was full of silence, fear, and rejection. But then God sent me a brother who believed in me, and a mother who rescued me. Today I can see, but more than that, I can give." The crowd erupted in applause. Madame Veronica stood at the back, wiping her tears quietly. Her two sons, one blind and one brave, had become her greatest joy. The compound of the Light Within School had grown into a vibrant hub of learning and laughter. The building, once a single bungalow with 3 classrooms, was now a spacious 2-story structure with ramps for easy access, a braille library, computer labs, and even a musical therapy room. Children with white walking canes moved around joyfully, guided not only by teachers, but also by each other. The school had become a symbol, not just in Enugu, not just in Nigeria, but far beyond. TV stations came to interview the young founders. Documentaries were made. International donors began supporting the school. What started as one boy's pain had bloomed into a mission of hope for hundreds. At the center of it all were two men, Chuka and Somedina, whose bond had become more than brotherhood. It was a story that healed others. It was on a bright Tuesday morning that Madame Veronica received the news while reading her Bible on the veranda. "Madam," the housekeeper said, entering with cautious excitement. "The governor's office sent a letter. It says Chuka and Somedina are to be awarded the Governor's Medal of Honor for Youth Empowerment. They want to organize a public ceremony. Channels TV is covering it." Veronica smiled gently, folded her Bible, and whispered, "Thank you, God. You don't forget your own." The news spread like wildfire. Invitations were printed, the compound repainted, and the students began practicing songs to perform for the big day. But while the world prepared for celebration, something else quietly bloomed in the background. Among the staff at the Light Within was a woman named Ifeoma, a tall, dark-skinned speech therapist with gentle hands and a laugh that could calm a storm. She had joined the school during its expansion and had always shown a particular warmth to the children. But what drew Somedina to her wasn't just her skill, it was her spirit. She reminded him of Chuka when they were younger: quiet strength, deep kindness, and no appetite for praise. They often worked late together, designing student programs, discussing family histories, sometimes arguing about jollof rice versus ofakwa. It was during one of these late evenings, while they watched the children playing under the setting sun, that Somedina turned to her and said softly, "You are the peace I didn't know I needed." Ifeoma blushed, looked at him with those wide, thoughtful eyes and replied, "You are the fire that reminds me life can start again." Their love grew gently, like a tree planted beside water. Madame Veronica watched them from a distance with the eyes of a woman who had seen both war and rainbows. She saw the way Somedina looked at Ifeoma. She saw the glow on Chuka's face every time he talked about his school children. One evening, after dinner, she called both boys to her room. "I want to divide this house," she said. "One wing will be for Chuka. One wing will be for Somedina and his future family. And I have updated my will. Both of you are my sons. What I have is yours." "Mama, you don't need to do all this now," Chuka protested gently. But she smiled. "My dear, the best time to plant a tree is before the rain comes, not when it's already falling." There was silence. Then she added, "I may not be here forever, but I want you to know that you have given me what I longed for all my life. Not money, not fame, but sons who love each other." The room fell quiet as the boys came close and embraced her, one on each side. The grand day arrived. Banners lined the school gates, celebrating light, a story of courage and kindness. The governor's convoy arrived. TV cameras flashed. The crowd clapped as the boys stepped forward in matching native attire. White senator wears embroidered with gold threads, designed by students of the school's fashion club. The governor himself handed the medals to them and said, "In a time where many chase after riches, these young men chose purpose. In a world full of selfishness, they chose to give. And in a country desperate for light, they became it." The applause thundered like a festival drum. Then the students came forward, singing a song composed just for them. Musical notes. "Once there was darkness, now we see. Once there was silence, now we sing. You gave us more than books or bread. You gave us love and dreams instead." Musical notes. Tears rolled freely, on faces old and young. The next morning, as the sun climbed lazily into the sky, a quiet knock came at the school gate. The security man opened, only to find a tired, bent figure standing with a walking stick. It was Ngozi. Her wrapper hung loosely on her bones. Her eyes were no longer sharp. Her lips trembled like old paper. I heard what they have become," she said, her voice hoarse. "I came to see if the boy, the one I wronged, can find space in his heart." The guard hesitated, but eventually let her in. Chuka met her at the corridor. He did not flinch. He did not scowl. She fell to her knees immediately. "I wronged you. I starved you. I called you cursed, but look at you now. Your father would be proud. Please, if nothing else, let me say sorry with my mouth before I leave this world." Chuka knelt beside her. He didn't say much. Only, I forgive you, and I hope you forgive yourself. She wept. That day, she ate a full plate of food in peace for the first time in years. She stayed at the staff quarters for 3 nights before quietly leaving. A year later, Somedina and Ifeoma had their traditional wedding, held right inside the school compound. The students danced, the drums echoed, and Chuka stood beside his brother as best man. When the wine-carrying ceremony was over, and Ifeoma gently knelt to give Somedina the wine, the whole crowd cheered. Madame Veronica, now walking with a cane, whispered to Chuka, "I don't have daughters. But today, God gave me one." Chuka nodded, smiling. "And one day, you'll have grandchildren running around here too." They laughed. And just as the sun began to dip, casting gold across the compound, Chuka looked out at the children playing on the field, the blind ones laughing, the sighted ones guiding them. He felt the wind brush against his face and closed his eyes. He could still hear his father's voice, gentle and warm, like a whisper in the soul. "You will see the sky one day, Nwam. I promise you." And he had. But more than that, he had become the sky, vast, beautiful, full of light.